Okay, I'm recording to the cloud now.
This meeting is being recorded.
Excellent. Okay. Well, welcome to everyone who's here. So I'm going to hide that and I'm going to, so we really appreciate you being here to learn about how you can be part of kids voting this fall and help us bring civic engagement to young people here in Durham. I'm Carolyn Kruger. I'm the program coordinator for kids voting. And I have with me here our volunteer coordinator for all of the cooperative extension. I'll let you introduce yourself, Cindy.
I'm Cindy Riley.
Um, so without further ado, we're gonna get started. Just to tell you a little bit about Kids Voting Durham, and I think if most of you are here, you know something about Kids Voting Durham, but we're a nonpartisan program of the Durham County Cooperative Extension that helps youth under 18 believe in and understand the power they have as engaged citizens and informed voters. Through a combination of hands-on learning experiences, youth voice activities, we connect youth directly with Durham decision makers, family engagement activities, and an authentic voting experience. We build the knowledge, skills, and sense of agency youth need to take full part in our community's civic life and our country's democratic institutions, not only in the future, which we hope they will do, but now, even before they turn 18. So what we're gonna go over in this session, we're gonna start with doing a kids voting activity that I like very much, called the Wish Tree. Just to give you a flavor of what some of our civic engagement activities look like. We'll talk a little bit about why should kids even vote and how kids voting elections work. And then we'll get into the meat of how you can help us make kids voting elections work, because it's volunteers that really make us be able to extend this voting opportunity and this civic engagement opportunity to youth all over Durham. So we'll talk about what's involved in running a kids voting site, the who, what, and where of that, and what a site leader's role is in running a kids voting site. And we'll talk about some other volunteer opportunities that we have during this time. And then finally, of course, we'll talk about how you can actually sign up to be a volunteer. As I go through this, please feel free to just speak up with any questions that you have. There'll be time at the end, but also just as we're going along, stop me or put something in the chat. Cindy's going to be monitoring the chat if you have a question as we go through. So I want to start with an activity that we call the Wish Tree. What is a wish that you have for our community's civic health, for our community's civic engagement here in Durham? And if you just want to drop the answer in the chat, the people who are here with us in person have written it and actually put it onto our wish tree. Amanda, will you talk so that they can see our wish tree? Because then our meeting owl will go over there. Can you say, this is our wish tree?
Oh, this is our wish tree.
So it's an actual tree. We have different trees where we hang leaves with our wishes on it. I'll ask Cindy to read your wishes in a minute, but we do this with young people because civic engagement often sounds like a very big and complex concept, word, activity to them. And we want to show them that it's really simple. It might be a big word, but really civic engagement is just having a wish for your community, a way that you want to make it better, a way that you want to help it, and working with other people to make that wish come true. That's really the root of all civic engagement. Cindy, what are some of our wishes from, do we have any wishes from online?
Not yet. I see people thinking though.
People are thinking.
Yep.
Good. Well, I know some of our wishes here in the room were, Amanda, do you want to read our wishes? Do you mind doing that?
Okay, sure. This one says, young voter turnout. This one says, I wish more youth would learn what civic engagement is. This one says, wish that all kids will be excited about becoming civically engaged and remain engaged as adults. And this last one says that everyone feels empowered to vote.
And then we do have some in the chat. I wish all youth and families had access to the resources that they need for their success. I wish that everyone knew that our elected officials work for us with an exclamation mark. And everyone understand the importance of voting in all elections.
So the next thing that we do when we do this activity with kids is we try to connect some of these great wishes, and these were all fantastic wishes. Increased voter turnout, more people feeling empowered and knowledgeable about voting, families having the resources that they need. We'd ask, what could young people do to help make these wishes come true? And there's usually a lot, young people, even though they are not 18 yet and cannot vote in a way that determines who gets elected, there is a lot that they can do to make things come true. Every other part of being a civic participant, they can participate in. We try to connect it to our elected officials. So what do the people we vote, what kind of impact do they have on helping us make these wishes to come true? But I can tell you that for all the wishes that you've made tonight, there is definitely a way that you can all help make them come true. Because they're all directly related to some of the outcomes that we see with kids voting, when we have volunteers out in our community, helping our kids to be engaged and our families to be engaged. So that's gonna lead me into why should kids even vote? And it's because it has some of the outcomes that you all just wished for. When kids vote, when they start getting engaged young and participate in our elections and learn about our local government and the offices that we elected, we see increased voter turnout in the future. Youth who are exposed to voting in elections in elementary school are 40% more likely to vote as adults, according to a recent Circle research study. The youth that we work with tell us that they reach adulthood more confident in their civic and voting skills. They know how to vote. They've done it a bunch of times. And I think you all know that voter turnout for 18 to 24-year-olds, it is 1/5 usually of the turnout for their grandparents' age, no matter what election is, whether it's a local election or a presidential election. We see increased adult voter turnout though too, because young people are incredible civic instigators. When they have the tools and the knowledge, they reach out to other adults and they get them out to vote. So we see a 3 to 6% increase in adult voting in kids voting communities. And that's something that Kids Voting USA has done some research on and shown. But we also have stronger youth community engagement now. Youth gain knowledge, skills, and motivation to be more active civic participants in their communities now as well as in the future. And part of this is we know that there's a presidential election year, and that's important, and it's what everybody's hearing about. But we put a lot of emphasis too on our local government and the ways that youth can connect with and be part of their local governments, which really are what impact their daily lives. Equitable civil opportunities is another thing we see through kids voting. There is a real gap in who gets hands-on civic opportunities to learn about voting, to learn about elections, and it plays out in who turns out to vote as adults. So by providing these civic opportunities to all youth and to as many youth across Durham, we hope that we're starting to close some of those civic opportunity gaps for youth. Right now, most youth that don't get this through intensive family interaction get it through school. And I often say, you know, we would not have a student read about swimming for 4 months during their senior year and then take them over to Lake Jordan and throw them in and ask them to swim across. But that's sort of what we do with voting. We don't give a lot of hands-on opportunities for learning over time and building that skill, and that is what we need. And finally, it just creates healthier communities. Research shows that any community's economic and physical health are directly correlated with its civic health. So it just makes for better all-around communities. So now that not going to let me there. So how do kids voting elections work? We let kids vote on the same candidates and issues as adults every election. So it starts with letting kids learn about elections, candidates, and issues. Youth write their own election guide to help other youth cast their vote. It's also just the best election guide out there. Amanda helped work on it this summer along with 30 other youth. So as many adults use it as youth do. Often we will hold candidate forums so that youth can interact directly with candidates. And we do family activities because we know that family education activities. In fact, this Saturday, we are doing an event with the Rainbow Coalition at Durham County Library at 11 a.m. If anyone wants to come, it's a story time with lots of crafts. But we know that families are big drivers of the kind of civic participants that their youth grow up to be. And as we just said, we know the opposite's true too, that young people can really motivate their adults in ways that nobody else can. So we try to have a number of different learning opportunities, not only in the classroom, but out in the community about elections, candidates, and issues. And here's where you come in, young people cast their ballots. So any school can request kids voting. But we also try to have kids voting in community sites and particularly at precincts on election day. So that youth that come out with their parents and that are encouraged to come out with their parents can also cast a vote in this election, and can do it in a real way, at a real site, and see voting in action. And then we announce the kids' voting results. Kids will often ask me, does my vote count? And I tell them it doesn't determine who's gonna get elected this time, but it counts. We count every single last vote. And we tell the people who ran for this office, we tell all the adults in the community who the youth voted for. And any time that you use your voice like that, through a vote, it counts. So what is involved in running a kids voting site? First of all, as I hope you can see from these photos, a lot of fun is involved running a kids voting site, and a lot of happiness and a lot of excitement. Who can run a kids voting site? Really anyone can run a kids voting site. It's particularly great for school groups, youth groups, and families, because younger people can do this as a volunteer opportunity. Not all volunteer opportunities are open to young people. It earns service hours for you. It's also a really great team building activity, not only for youth groups, but we often have work groups who will come and run a kids voting site for us. Youth under 16 need to have assigned guardian permission to be at the site when their guardian is not present, and they must have an adult present at their site. But everybody else, we've had people come with babies on their hips and help run a kids voting site. The one thing, we don't have a lot of rules about who can run a kids voting site, but everybody who does has to agree to be nonpartisan. That is one of kids voting's fundamental precepts. We are not telling kids who to vote for. We are giving them the tools and the power on how to decide their own vote and who they are as a voter. So what does it mean to be nonpartisan? First of all, who is nonpartisan? Precinct officials. All the precinct officials that help you cast your vote have to agree to be nonpartisan. And when we have people run precincts for us, we try to emulate that. So that our kids voting site leaders really emulate that nonpartisanship that you see from all our election officials, even for adults. It means not saying anything that favors a particular candidate or issue. When you're at a site, not wearing anything that favors a particular party or issue or candidate. Why we have our cool kids voting t-shirts too. Not doing anything that favors a party or candidate or issue position. And not to have any literature at your voting site, except kids voting approved literature that we have, like our election guide. And if you want, and you are representing an organization, the great thing about kids voting is you can use it as an opportunity to talk about your organization to the community. So you can have, as long as your organization is nonpartisan, you can have that information there. And we ask this of a volunteer when you're running a kids voting site, but anytime anyone is representing kids voting, including myself. I think most of us who are involved in kids voting have strong political beliefs and are very involved politically. But when we come to kids voting, we have to be nonpartisan. Where can you run a kids voting site? You can run a kids voting site at Durham precincts on election day, November 5th. Durham Public Schools are off for the day, so it is a great day. We hope we're going to have a lot of youth showing up at polls, showing up with their parents. And there are precincts, there's 57 precincts all over Durham. We can help match you with a site that's near you or that has special meaning to your group. So that's one option. There's also 8 early voting sites around Durham this fall. Although we don't do the college early voting sites because not enough kids show up there, but all our regional library sites and any potential other, I think, there'll be a couple other early voting sites as well. On those Saturdays and Sundays of early voting, that is another place that we like to have kids voting booths. We know that not everybody is going to come to vote with their parents and that not all people feel comfortable coming to a polling site. So we also have community sites that have requested kids voting, or if you know of a community site where you think there's a need, we're having this fall event, or I'd love to do it at a park that we frequent. We can help you arrange to have a kids voting site where you think there's a community need and where kids are coming anyways, where we might reach some kids that we would not reach at the precincts. So just like anyone can run a kids voting site, a kids voting site can be almost anywhere, but we do especially try to cover precincts throughout Durham and early voting sites. What does a site leader do? So if you are volunteering to be a site leader, you take a short kids voting training. We give you training on being nonpartisan, on how to actually run the election site. We'll go through a little bit of that here today. And then you recruit and train enough volunteers to cover the kids voting booths most hours. If it is an election day precinct, that means from morning, the polls open at 6:30. We do not ask our volunteers to be there at 6:30. We have a self-serve period through 7 p.m., which is 7:30 p.m., which is when that election site closes. If it's an early voting site, it can be the hours of that early voting site, which have not been announced yet, but will be shortly. Or if it's your own site, the community site, the hours can vary. And then you help promote the kids voting site in conjunction with kids voting. So we give you materials and tools, posters, social media posts. We have our own social media posts that we put out where all our sites are, our events calendar on our website. But if you want to promote it directly to the neighborhood that you're having it in, or the area where your precinct is, we give you the tools to help you do that. You set up your election site. Again, if you're doing an election day precinct, we'll connect you with the chief judge for that actual precinct, and you will set it up the night before when they're setting up the adult polls. So that we know that we are not in the way of adult polls. That is one of our cardinal rules, is we really want kids to vote, but even more than that, we want to not invalidate any adult voting. So we work very closely with the Board of Elections to make sure that all our site workers know the rules that they need to follow in order to not interfere with the adult vote. But the biggest rule is you do whatever the chief judge tells you to do, and that's why we have you meet them the night before and set it up there. And then that evening, you make sure that you've tallied the ballots from your site, you text them to me so that we can get our results out that night, just the same way that the adults get their results. And that's really important to the kids to know that their results were as important as the adults. So our school results, and we'll have several thousand. Last presidential election, we had 16,000 voters in schools, are tallied by Measurement Incorporated, which is a wonderful testing company here that volunteers to make Scantron ballots for us. But so that we can get the voting site results in, if on election day, we have the election day sites tally right there, but it's a simple and easy thing to do. So, sorry, when you go to set up your site, we give you everything that you need. And if you can see behind me here, we actually have a voting site set up, but if you're online, it might be easier for you to see the picture that we have here. So we give you a ballot box, ballots, I voted stickers, which is an important part of any voting experience, whether you are a youth or adult. A little voting bookmark that tells them where to get their results after they voted. An election guide, the election guide, so that they can inform their vote, activity sheets and some things for kids to take home. And then sometimes we have selfie booth props if people want to take a photo after they've cast their vote, which is always exciting and gets other people excited about voting as well. But these will all come to you in a kit. You will have everything you need. There's nothing you really need to prepare or do. Some of the things that will be in the kit that you can just walk over and see if you want to at our voting site. But again, for those of you online, you'll have a copy of our election guide, our 2024 election guide. We're hoping will be up next week at the link kidsvotingdurham.org 2024-EG. And then, of course, the ballots. And this is our 2022 ballot. The 2024 ballot is even longer because not only do we have federal, state, and local races on it, we have a state ballot initiative and we have 2 local ballot initiatives. So it will be a very crowded ballot. But it looks a lot like the adult ballot with the addition of pictures, which even adults like the pictures. When you actually run your booth, or your volunteers run your booth during your day, it's a pretty simple thing. You invite kids to vote, give them a ballot. You show them how to access the kids voting election guide, and we'll have paper copies for you, or we'll have QR codes where people can do it on their phone and go through the guide there if they want. They fill out their ballot, they place it in the ballot box, and you congratulate them and give them an I voted sticker and a bookmark that tells them where they can look for the results the following day. And it is, Cindy, have you ever helped a kid to vote? I can't. They get so excited. And I will say, even when Cindy and I ask them to vote, they get excited, but if a teenager asks them, and this is one of the reasons we like youth groups to do this, you've helped vote, they get pretty excited when a teenager asks them to come cast a vote. They are getting asked to do something really important. And often they will take a long time with that ballot. They take it seriously. And they look so happy when they get that voting sticker at the end. It's as much a joy, I think, for the people running the booth as it is for the kids who are actually voting. So this is definitely, if you're not feeling great about this election on every front, this is the best lens through which to view any election, is through the
sure.
eyes of a young person. And it does remind us, this election isn't just about who we elect this time. It's about creating and building up our next generation of democratic citizens. And so that is always, for me, a hopeful way to look at elections. Afterwards, and I'm gonna stop talking soon, but again, if you have questions, please feel free to step up and ask them. Afterwards, you'll check the ballots to make sure that they're filled in, or you'll tally the ballots using the ballot sheet, depending on if you're on election day site or not. And you'll pack up the materials and return them to kids voting. All of this said, with all these rules and details that I've given to you, really the number one rule of kids voting is to treat voting as a celebration. People often ask me, how young can somebody vote? And as soon as they can hold a pencil, older kids will be able to look at the ballot and when Amanda looks at her ballot, she thinks about she reads the election guide and looks who's, best fit with her as a voter. But for younger kids, we just want them to feel that excitement of being asked to vote, of knowing that voting is an exciting and good feeling. And so, again, even if they just scribbled on their ballot and just squealed with delight when they got their voting sticker, we want every kid to feel like voting is a celebration and something that we should all be very excited about.
Carolyn,
So, yes.
sorry, I have a quick question. We were hoping to do this at our school, at Pearson Town. So obviously we would have to try to do some early voting since election day. The school is closed because, most of the schools are used as polling sites. Would that be okay, even though it's not one of the 8 early voting sites? And then that's my
So-
first question. Second question is, do you have a copy of that permission form that we would need for those under 16 in the event their parents couldn't be there to accompany them?
So you're a little bit of a different situation. This is voting at community sites, which include precincts and early voting sites and any other community sites. Schools have a separate process for voting, and Pearson Town has already signed up to vote this year. So because you
Okay.
have charge of your students in school, they don't need permission slips. And it's great because at Pearson Town, traditionally, the way that you've done it as an all-school voting activity is you've had the 5th graders run it for the younger kids, which I think is always an exciting model. But we will give you've already signed up for the materials and everything that you'll need. We'll bring you your kits and you can run kids voting in your school. You will need to do it sometime between October 17th, which is the start of early voting, and November 4th.
Okay.
Because school is closed that day. But we send you all the instructions and all the materials, and Pearson Town is signed up already. Your PTA signed up.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So we'll expect the kits and then we just need to do the early voting between the 17th and November 4th.
And we give you a whole, even more intensive set of trainings and with the activities that you can do in the classroom. And again, if you want to do something like have your 5th graders run the polling sites again, I can give you some of what has been done before with your school.
Perfect. Perfect. I do need to hop off, unfortunately, because we do have a PTA meeting that starts at 7.
We'll tell them we're looking forward to having Pearson Town vote with us again. You guys have been some of our longest term voters and always some of our highest.
Misty said make it happen, so if she says it, we do it.
Excellent.
Okay, all right. We will look to hear from you guys, and I can email you. Sorry to take up everybody's time. Sorry, I can email you if I have any more questions.
Please do. Yes, absolutely
Okay,
do.
all right.
Schools will be getting a welcome letter for us later this week, all the schools who've signed up.
Awesome.
But
Thank you
also,
so much. Oh, go ahead.
If your students want to, on election day when they're off, if you have a student group that wants to run a polling site, even at this polling site at Pearson Town for kids who come in, it's a great service activity for young people, so.
Okay, all right.
Be something you want to throw out too.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you so much.
Dana.
And then Carolyn, you just had a comment that the design is so cool.
Which design?
I guess all of them.
Okay,
I think she just likes all of your, yeah,
good,
all of your material.
excellent. So
Oh,
just
the guide, she said.
the guide is very cool, and that I cannot take real credit for because the young people do it. I bring snacks. And they do all the rest, right, Amanda? Um,
Well, you
So-
know how I feel about the guide.
Yes, our staff starts bugging me for the guide. They all use it. Our county commissioners bug me for when the guide is ready, because that is what they use to cast, to inform their vote. The young people just write an amazing guide. So if you are not, or if in addition to running a site, or if you don't completely have time to run a site, we have additional volunteer opportunities as well. And I'll talk about the kids voting ones, but Cindy could also talk to you about, we have volunteer opportunities throughout the year throughout cooperative extension, and that's what Cindy does for us. But particularly with regards to kids voting leading up to election day, we can always use office admin help in preparing our kits and materials. So even making wish tree kits and things like that, that we give to schools, putting together some of our school kits. We will need some help in correcting the ballots that come in from schools and making sure that they're done on the Scantron form. So for those of us who used to take the bubble test in the old days, we had to use the number 2 pencil and get it right in the little bubble. That's the kind of voting that we have. We need to make sure, since kids don't take those anymore, that they filled them in correctly. So we have a pretty big team that sits around here for the 3 days on election day and before election day and helps us correct ballots. And then I'll throw this out here after elections. We are really hoping that this will be the year that we start a year-round kids voting civic engagement corps. And this will be a group of people that are trained in not only our voting activities, but our other civic engagement activities that can be done with youth of all ages. And that we will then be able to deploy these people to other youth groups, other schools, other places that have requested us because they do not have the staffing to implement kids voting. Right now, the only place that we can do kids voting activities is where there's somebody that we can have a teachers in the classroom that can do the activity, or we have a volunteer on election day that can do the activity, because I am practically the only staff person. I work within this wonderful organization of Durham County Cooperative Extension. I have colleagues like Cindy and our supply assistant Gabe, who works with us part-time. But we really, if we want to be able to reach and fill all the needs that we get requests for out there, we really want to have a set of trained people that we can send out and that can really be doing some of these activities in our libraries with our youth groups and with others. So how do you sign up? And then I'm gonna stop questions and all of that. So if you go to kidsvotingdurham.org/2024 volunteers, that gives you 2 options. One is to sign up for this event, but tomorrow it will be to watch the video of this event. And then the second is to actually sign up to volunteer. So there's a little bit of information about the different opportunities in the precincts, and then there's a form that you can fill out that will just ask you your name, what group you're representing, if you are representing a group, if you want to run a precinct or do another kind of volunteer activity. And somebody will be in contact with you to set up more details. You can also always reach out to me. My email is ckreuger@dconc.gov. And if it's easier to remember, you can also reach me at info@kidsvotingdurham.org. And my phone number is there too, 919-560-7321. I'm not often at my desk because I'm running around, but if you leave a message, I will always get back to you very quickly. So I am going to end it there after I show you a few more pictures of all the cute kids voting. And we have kids of all ages voting, but sometimes the most photogenic ones are the littlest ones. So these are taken from over the years. And I am going to pause it there. I'm actually going to stop sharing so that I can invite any of questions that any of you would like to ask.
So there is one question in the chat. If I've already filled out the information for a kit for this year before this session, do I need to do it again?
Are you talking about a school kit or at MLK? Yes, we have your information for voting at MLK, so you don't need to fill it out again. This is more if your youth want to volunteer to run a site but not a school or a club that is voting within them. But again, if you have students that want to run another site in addition to voting for them. But yes, I know that we have you on our list, and you should also be getting a welcome email from us, with some more information at the end of this week. Does anybody else have any other information, any other questions or,
I have a question.
yes, Amanda?
So can you run a kids voting booth? Can you run it at a church, like for the youth at the church, like the youth program at the church?
You can absolutely run it for the youth program at the church. We've had several church youth programs vote with us. I know that, Pat is also here with the church youth group and that she's, interested in having her youth, both maybe vote in their church youth group, but also run a voting site, so. It's a great, again, team building thing.
I was wondering, how many schools are involved? I know you mentioned Pearson Town has signed up to have voting site, kids voting site there. Are there how many other schools?
There are, so typically, in 2020, we had 100% of all Durham public schools vote with us. Typically during a presidential year, we have close to all of the Durham public schools vote for us, but also charter schools and private schools are welcome to sign up to vote with us. Also, we provide all the materials and supplies free, thanks to the support of Durham County Commissioners. In other election years, we have anywhere between, 30 and 40 schools signed up to vote, but we try to get as many as possible. And if you know that schools that might benefit from this and might not have signed up, please feel free to send them to the kids voting website. There's a drop-down menu, especially for educators, and one for school sign up where they can go and watch a video about what we provide and go ahead and sign up their school. Anyone else have any questions, any thoughts, any comments?
I have another question.
Excellent.
So I'm homeschooled, right? So could I run a booth at my friend's school? Like, could me and my friend run a booth at their school?
If you have the permission of the school, that is the one thing with schools, that you need to have the permission of the school. We've had students do that many times before, like they've run it on their lunch hour, they've run it before or after school. Sometimes they've collaborated with teachers and actually gone into classrooms and done it there. So yes, absolutely do that. What school did you have in mind? Because I can tell you if they're signed up too.
I have a friend that goes to Excelsior. It's a charter school.
They have signed up before. They're not signed up yet this year, so they could be a good one to do that way. So yes, absolutely. But again, with a school, you do need permission of the school people.
So it can be a one-day community event that you might be going to and you could host people.
Yeah, so we have one school that's doing in-school voting, but they also have a fall festival every year easily. So they're going to have kids voting at their fall festival, and they're also gonna have it for their in-school voting. Old North Durham has a Halloween party, and most years they have a kids voting booth at their neighborhood block party for the weekend before Halloween. So yes, you can run a kids voting site anywhere that you want. Again, we also really hope that we will find some people to run on election days. We'd love to have more booths and more evenly spaced around Durham for this election when we know so many people are going to be turning out. So that will be one of my last pitches to you all, is I really hope all of you will sign up and volunteer. You can do it at the link, you can contact me, but also share this with other people that you think might be interested. Youth groups who need service hours, families who are looking for a positive way to be involved in this election, work groups who might get service hours through their work. We can verify those service hours for them. I don't know if any of you are also Durham County employees that are in here, but Durham County will pay for volunteer hours for its employees, and we qualify for that, and for city employees as well. So please share this as widely as you can. Thank you both for coming in. And yes, I do feel like this is a great way to ward off the cynicism people are feeling about elections and government in general. It's the long view. And I look forward to working with you. Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, I'm gonna let you all get on with your evening. But again, I really hope that I'll be working with some of you this fall. And I really appreciate you coming and spending this time with us tonight. Thank you.
And did you see the message from Liz? So excited that you're coming to talk to the.
Girl Scouts, yes,
Yeah.
yes, we are. I'm excited we can make that work too. Hmm? Girl Scouts? I'm talking to the leaders conference next week.
You're talking at a Girl Scouts leader